Hello, welcome to AI in Action. My name is Maury, and I'm here with my husband Jim, and we are going to be talking, of course, about artificial intelligence. Before we get started, we are going to go ahead and just heartbroken about what has been happening in the state of Texas. Yeah. Our listeners know that we are in Llano, Texas, which is out in the hill country. We're about, what would you say, Jim,
Well,
200
what we're
yards from the Llano River?
probably our back building's not even 200 yards. It's probably 100, yards, but
Yeah,
it's not far.
but the
We can
Llano,
definitely see it.
yeah, the Llano River has a different monitoring system, and it's so much easier to know ahead of time when the Llano River is going to come on a rise. I was talking about this earlier today. The Llano River basically just has two major tributaries that feed it. I mean, it's got creeks and stuff, but nothing like
It's got a
they
lot of
have at the
creeks.
Guadalupe. Um,
It's got a lot
and
of
the
creeks, and they're small, but yes.
Yeah, it's just so sad. So
So
it
I
feels
always
weird talking about artificial intelligence.
I always
When
say
Yeah.
that what do you want me to get my PhD in? It so happens that I have a PhD in the Llano River because
Oh,
I grew
true.
up here, and my dad, who was kind of an amateur scientist, we used to play at the river, and it absolutely, river safety was beat into us, not literally, but beat into our heads from the time we could walk. Because back in when I was young, kids would go to the river by themselves. I mean, I was down there by myself when I was 10 years old, so we were taught about river safety, and it saved me more than once, actually, because the Llano River is susceptible to flash flooding. But to your point, most of the tributaries are there's a south and north fork of the Llano River, which is the origin of the river, but there's a lot of little small creeks along the way. But many of there's major points where they can monitor it, and
Hmm.
the water comes in fairly known amounts, so you could put monitoring stations along the way, and have a pretty good picture of the water. I mean, I watched it. There's a thing called LCRA hydromet, and I was showing it to you, watching the water come down, so we can see it. And I was
Hmm.
literally standing back there as I could hear the river coming. It's loud, but anyway, but the Guadalupe is different because all the water feeds into it through the rainfall, like here, but it's very hard, like rocky, hard ground. And if you look at a LiDAR image of it, it's actually it's got wrinkles in the rock. So all these, that's what they look like on LiDAR. So all this water hits, and almost every bit of it feeds straight in. But
Hmm.
it feeds in
Nothing
from
soaks in.
a million little places. Basically, everywhere a drop of rain hits, it's pretty much going to run downhill. So the reality is you really, because it moves so fast, you can't put a monitoring system in place that's going to give you enough warning. My answer to this, and I think they've tried it, but they need more research, which means they need to stop cutting funding to it. But they need more research because I think AI and computer modeling is the only shot you've got. You've got to be able to say rain is, so many inches of rain has fallen in the last 3 hours, which means the water is going to come up this much. I think they could build pretty good models, but the problem with it is that if you use radar which they do to estimate rainfall, your estimates can be wildly off. You only have like 30 minutes, 40 minutes
If
from,
that. Yeah.
but remember, the rain didn't fall in 30 minutes. That the rain fell over a couple of hours, and by the time enough of it hit that basin and started coming down as a wave, then you only had 30 minutes.
Right.
So you have to be able to estimate that rainfall across these wide areas. It's a really bad. Of course, you also, I mean, you have to. The Llano River, they don't build things close to the river because it will get taken. And
Yes.
Guadalupe is so beautiful, and there's so many places. They build camps and they have campgrounds. I can understand why. There's these tall trees. It's a beautiful place,
Yeah.
but it's also dangerous. So
Very dangerous. I was very
the little kids,
the
still,
governor, yeah, the governor in
oh,
Texas, he just posted that they're saying now that there's like an additional 160 people that are still missing.
that's
So
just
I
awful.
these numbers are going to climb, and unfortunately, it happened Fourth of July weekend. So we had a bunch of people from
Camps,
out of state that
yes,
were
they
at
don't,
RV parks, and
and they
and
don't
they
register
haven't been trained. Yeah, they haven't been trained that if it's raining, you automatically start looking for
high ground.
high ground. And so it's horrible. And I hate the way that people are politicizing it and some of the things that are being said. It breaks my heart that people
Don't be
are that way.
don't be ugly. I don't care what your political affiliation is. You shouldn't politicize school shootings, and you shouldn't politicize little kids drowning in the middle of the night. It's
I
just sick.
agree.
Anyway,
I
moving
agree.
on. Very depressing, but it is what
All
it is.
right. We just had to say something because it's one of those things, as
It's
I said,
horrible.
we don't want to
As a
do a
parent,
podcast and not at least, say that our
acknowledge.
hearts are just broken. Yeah. So let's talk about artificial intelligence and the news, specifically policy news, is something kind of cool coming out of Ohio, which you and I were just talking about it because I was like, this isn't really any different from what a lot of the other states have done, but it actually is a little different because now they are mandating in the state of Ohio that your K-12 schools have a policy. In the
Yeah,
past, they always gave like, hey, here's your guidance, do it.
I would love to see that mandate here. We fight every district we talk to. The first that we've been telling them for almost 3 years. Your first step is a policy. First step, first
Yes.
step. And there's lots of companies we partner with. There's people we've done it on our own where we've gone into these school districts and we say, look, we will help you create the policies. Creating the initial policy is not rocket science. It really isn't.
No.
But you've got to get to be able to articulate clearly. I mean, our first policy attempt that we did at our school district had to do with just taking our terms of use policies and stuff, student use policies, and they're in the handbooks, and just update them. And we
Mm-hmm.
had to fight the attorneys over that one because since they didn't understand it, they didn't want to put the verbiage in there because they didn't know the legalities
Right.
of what we're saying, even though nothing we said was really a huge stretch from the informal policies everybody's doing anyway. It's just we were
Right.
articulating them so there was clarity. And we've tried the scare tactic thing, the lawsuits. You've talked about that on our podcast. The schools got sued because some kid got a bad grade and he couldn't get into college and yada yada yada. We thought those tactics would work and make people aware enough that they would think, okay, this really isn't that hard. But it's the attorneys have gotten everybody so scared in schools of making a decision between the politics and the lawyers. If you make a decision, you pay for it. The best thing you can do is
Yes.
not make any decision and just kind of let it ride out and see what happens, and then make the decision once the lawsuit happens.
Right. They're just hoping for the best. They're just
Yeah,
hoping that nothing happens. So
isn't the
Ohio is now requiring that. So let's see if some other states start, following suit. The next thing that I thought was interesting was that the U.S. Senate strikes the AI regulation ban from Trump's mega bill. So,
hold on before you move on? You said it earlier, and I think it's worth repeating. When you look at this news story about Ohio,
mhm.
the other thing that they mention in there in the fine print is they're banning cell phones during instructional time,
Right. So on one
which
hand, you're
they're
like,
doing.
hey, we have to have AI policy. On the other hand, you're like, wait a second, we're going to have all this ban on, cell phones and
But
communication devices.
but that's a personal device, and I agree with banning them. The state of Texas just passed a law that bans them in every K-12 district. I think that is absolutely necessary. And you and I have talked about that ad length and ad nauseum about why we think that's a good idea. We both like technology,
Hmm.
but and we both got our kids cell phones, but we delayed it a little bit because we didn't want them on their cell phones all the time. But I don't think that people should connect the two. If kids want to use the cell phone for AI, they can do it at home. They don't need a cell phone in a school district for AI.
All right. I'm going to not disagree with you, but I am going
Go
to
for it. I like to
comment.
argue. I like to argue.
Well, I'm going to comment because I was actually having a conversation with Teresa the other day, a lady that comes to our house every so often and helps me out. And she was like, oh, I'm all for it, yada, yada, yada. This is awesome. They should be doing this, should have done it a long time ago.
Yep.
And I was like, you're correct. It should have been done. But let's talk about the can of worms that we just opened. And so then I started talking about $15 a pouch, $13 if you're going to do per student, if you're going to do a case, like a metal locker kind of thing to put them in. Um, What about the kid? We have 500 and something students that are going to be walking into our high school. Are they going to give it to their homeroom? Are they going to have to take it to the library and check it in?
No,
Are
they
they
stick it
supposed
in
to
their
just leave
backpack.
it?
They stick it in their backpack.
But now you have to have it secure, because if they're in the hallway and they've got it in their backpack, they're going to get it out as soon as they're in the hallway.
And they get it
And they're
taken
not
up, and they don't.
supposed to have, and so what I'm saying though is that you have these people that make this policy, and they always just blanket state, hey, we're going to ban cell phones. It's mandated. Okay, schools, you got to do this.
Okay, I
They
think
they don't think about the details.
I think I know where you're coming from on this, because you spent so much time in the classroom, and you
And as an
still,
assistant
and
principal
as
and as a
assistant principal.
counselor, and yeah.
I don't think any of those. I think the only one that matters in this discussion is the teacher part, because you've experienced the fact that the teachers get expected to police it. The teachers are
Yes.
trying very hard to build a relationship with the kids,
Yes.
and when they're the ones that have to be in the hallways taking up the
Taking
cell
up cell
phones.
phones.
But you know what? That's a great assign the coaches to walk the halls, because coaches are used to pulling things away from the kids that are. I think that you tell them to stick it in their bag. You tell them, if you see it, if I see your watch, your glasses, or any piece of communication technology out during the day, you will not get it back till the bell rings. If I see it twice, you're going to ISS. I see it 3 times, you're going to go to ABC or be banned from having it at school at all. I don't
So
think we
just
should be
one more minute.
responsible for paying for it.
One more minute on this, and then we're going to move on.
Okay.
What happens is the inconsistency of the policy. It happened all the time in junior high, and it's always that first period, second period teacher that has to catch the cell phones, catch the dress code violations, all this stuff. And then if you have a first period, second period teacher that doesn't do that, then by fifth or sixth period, the teacher's like, what?
Yeah, but the policy's not optional anymore. What's your statement about the teacher in first, second period not doing it? They don't have a choice. They can't inconsistently apply the policy. It's literally breaking the law. And most teachers won't do it. It does matter. I don't agree with you. Teachers,
you're gonna have teachers that are gonna ignore it, and
then fire them.
Well, we have a teacher shortage right now.
It doesn't matter. It's the law.
I'm just saying, they didn't think about it. People don't think about it.
They never think about it. That's not their problem.
They don't think about it. They don't ask teachers' opinions. They just put these laws out there, and the teachers' opinions that they're asking maybe spend a year in the classroom, and that's it.
Yeah, so, I don't think you're going to find very many teachers that have an opinion that kids ought to be allowed with their cell phones. I have not talked to a teacher yet. They all hate the cell phones. Every one of them.
I do not think they should be allowed to have their cell phones.
Apparently you do.
I do not. No, I don't.
You just did. You just argued with me.
I do not think they should be allowed to have their cell phones, but I do think that it's going to take a lot more to implement than just somebody at a state capitol signing a little thing that says, "Oh, make it so."
What do you think the state the only thing they could do is they could apply money to it, but it's not like Ted Cruz is going to come down and sit in a school and take up people's cell phones. So at some point, I do agree with you on the unfunded mandate part. If you expect the school district to implement the policy and police it, which that's not going to happen. What's going to happen is they're going to tell the teachers, and they're going to tell them, if you see it out, send them to the office or take it up or whatever. That's what, because the teachers are going to be the police. I agree with you on that, and that stinks.
And then you're going to have doctor's notes, and then you're going to have
doctor's notes don't apply. You have to have a medical reason to have it, like a monitoring system. You can't just say, I've got the flu, I have to have my cell phone. It doesn't work.
You're going to have parents up everybody's rears.
Parents are going to be the problem, because the parents. Be a nightmare. Oh, what if I need to contact my baby? We'll call the office. We'll send them a note. I'm going to sound like one of those really old guys, because I read recently that they hate it when you say this. So I'm going to say it.
Okay.
When I was a kid, we didn't have cell phones, but somehow we managed to get through school without them. Yes. And I get it. I get the kid have it. That's why I think the kid at some point, if the parent would back it up and say, do not have your cell phone out, or I will not let you take it to school. If the parents would back it up, then the implementation wouldn't be so complicated. So anyway, moving on.
We need AI cameras to be watching for cell phones in the hallways. Okay.
Ooh, next product.
There we go. Cameras, cell phone detection.
It'll be like those gunshot detectors that everybody wants to sell us.
Let's talk about the U.S. Senate striking the AI regulation ban from the Trump mega bill. So
I thought it was
basically,
interesting
yeah, I think so too. Tell me about it.
because, I thought it was interesting because if that would have passed and it would have meant that what Ohio just did, they theoretically, even though all they said was you have to have a policy, theoretically they couldn't have passed that.
Right,
That was the
right.
problem. There was one senator, which I think it was, oh yeah, Marsha Blackburn. She said, unless Congress passes federally preemptive legislation like Kids Online Safety Act and an online privacy framework, we can't block states from making laws that protect their citizens. I, that goes to what you were just arguing with me about implementation. She
Hmm.
looked at it and said, if you're not willing to put the details in it, then you have to let the states have it.
Hmm.
And guess what? 99 to 1 vote
Yeah,
against putting
very
it in
clear
there.
message. Very clear message.
That
Because
was really clear.
what they were trying to do is they were trying to put a 10-year ban on state AI regulation.
Yeah, you
So
couldn't pass them.
basically, what they were doing is they were saying, okay, and they were doing it for the big companies,
Of
in
course.
my opinion, so that
Oh,
the big
absolutely.
corporations had a
What is your
10-year
what is your
free for
favorite
all,
saying? What's your favorite saying?
follow the
Follow
money,
the money.
follow the
Follow the
money.
money. And that's
And
exactly what this was about.
yeah, they were trying to put a 10-year moratorium on it where, nobody could pass any AI
Hmm. Hmm.
regulations. And I am very glad that they struck that down
What did
99
it?
to 1.
But one of the comments that I this is my comment. This isn't anybody else. I didn't see this anywhere else. It kind of reminded me of the Internet Freedom Act. I remember the
Hmm.
huge arguments when the World Wide Web, not the internet, but the World Wide Web came around, and everybody was getting on it, and the states were starting to talk about the states. It was about the money. It was protecting brick and mortar mostly.
Hmm.
If you're Barnes and Noble and you've got a bookstore
You have
and
to pay
people
sales tax.
and you have to pay sales tax. Amazon and all them didn't think they should have to pay sales tax because they didn't have a local store. I'm
Right.
not selling it in the state of Texas. So I don't have a presence in the state of Texas. Therefore, I should not be required to pay a state of Texas sales tax.
Hmm.
And so they put limitations on it, but the limitations were kind of reasonable. But I remember the arguments were venomously, for against. It was always what you always say: follow the money.
Hmm.
But in reality, I think the compromise they came up with was pretty decent. They said you can't tax them more or just because they don't have brick and mortar. But if the goods come to the state, you have to charge sales tax.
Right. If you
Now,
ship it to the state.
the problem they have is from an online perspective, they had it back then. That's one of the reasons why Amazon became so big. Because if you do that, think about it. You've done a lot of website development stuff, and
Mm.
you've taken money through websites, and had to charge the taxes and pay the bill, and for a fact that it takes effort to not only set up for the payment, but now how do I get that money to the state?
To the state, right?
Exactly, because now I got to charge tax. Well, people like Amazon had the money to put in the infrastructure to automate that process.
Hmm.
Maury, in for example, other
Spices.
your spices and
Yeah.
stuff, it's more complicated for you and it's harder, and you don't have a whole team of developers that are doing nothing other than dealing with that. So it made it harder for the little guys to compete with the ones like Amazon because it costs money to put in the infrastructure to send the money to the state.
Right.
I mean, how many hours have you spent doing sales tax forms? And that's not just
Ridiculous.
that was when we also actually had a brick and mortar. But I mean, it was a reasonable compromise, but I think it hurt some of the smaller online businesses because they couldn't compete. And I think one of the things that helped Amazon get such a massive lead on everybody because they could put in the infrastructure. Now there's enough services out there, I think, that I don't know, you'd have to answer this. When you put in a billing thing on a website now, do they handle the tax stuff for you?
Bases it on the zip code, the shipping address.
Do they send it to the state for you?
Oh my
I mean,
goodness, it's been such a long time. I really don't think they do. Not
I
the
thought
ones that I've dealt with.
I thought they did. I thought maybe
Not the
you
ones that I've dealt with. And I know that if we talk to our son-in-law, our accountant son-in-law, I know that
could probably
he's
tell us.
constantly dealing with different state regulations and different state forms that he's having to fill out for the
Yeah,
company he is the CFO for.
yeah, they're a
So
services company.
because
They don't sell a product.
Yeah,
They're a services
exactly.
company. I'm wondering if somebody probably, who's the last billing service you use, like Stripes or something? Is that who you use?
Yeah, Stripe. Yeah.
Stripe? Yeah. They
Hmm.
probably handle it for you,
I don't know. But
sending it
I
from the
do
state.
know that this has nothing to do with artificial intelligence.
It kind of does
Come on, wrap it
because,
back to artificial intelligence for me,
well,
Jim.
it has to do with AI because the idea of the states passing, and I thought was interesting, and I brought this information in because I thought you'd find it interesting because you've been following this stuff for a long
Hmm.
time in terms of the rules in the different states, like when you joined the bar and whatever you did in the state of New York. At the time you first started tracking this, there was like no states that had any rules on the books. And then you and I remember we went to California a couple times and did some
Yep.
professional development, and California was the leader. And we used to talk about that. California too. Now, according to the people that track this stuff, Beckage Firm in June 2025 reported that 48 states and Puerto Rico have introduced AI related with bills, with 26 of them enacting new measures.
Okay.
And there's over 1,000 AI regulatory bills currently making their way through state legislative process. You have to agree with OpenAI and people like that. It is going to make it hard for the little guys. I mean, if you're
Oh,
a
yeah.
little company and you're trying to deal with how the heck are 48, basically every state, there's 50 states. Who's not doing it?
Probably not Texas. I don't know.
Not, I think, well,
I'd,
no,
I'd have to
Texas
look it
do.
up. I'd have to look it
Texas
up.
might. Anyway, but you're talking all these different regulations, and I left you some notes there about
So let's
what
talk
they're
about what they're
covering.
covering. Yeah. So
Okay,
what are they covering? They're covering government use of AI, which I know that like the
that
Austin
makes
AI
sense.
Alliance, we talk a lot about the city
Yeah,
of Austin and how they
yeah,
already have things in place. Now they're talking about government use of it, like, okay,
right.
transparency, how are you using it? That kind of thing. Deep fakes and election integrity, which very important.
Well, state of Texas passed a pseudo deep fake one, right?
A take it down
Which
kind of thing, kind of like they
which
did at the federal
I
level.
didn't really think that the state of Texas one was that unreasonable. You just had, if it was AI generated, you had to say so. I don't think that's
Right,
unreasonable.
right.
But when you talk about the government use thing, I was going to give you a little bit of an extra piece in there. I was on a call and there was a lady from the licensing or something for the state of Texas. I don't remember what it was, but she was really focused on making sure that you didn't use DeepSeek, which is that Chinese open
Hmm.
source.
Hmm.
So I think part of that state regulations are going to be, there's some people that are very passionate about which AI you use,
Right,
which is kind of unfortunate to some degree, but I kind of understand why they're so scared of it, because in this case they don't really understand AI very well, so they didn't understand
right.
what that meant. But anyway, go ahead with the other stuff.
So deep fakes and election integrity, penalties for like malicious use of like synthetic media, political campaigns, and stuff like that. Workforce and employment, about using AI and hiring for like employment decisions to prevent discrimination. Um,
That's going to be tough
that's
because
interesting. I mean, because
that is
even
interesting.
before AI, they were using machine language, or they were
Machine learning,
using
machine
machine learning.
learning.
I mean, sorry, I'm exhausted tonight. They were using machine learning to like look at resumes and
Hmm.
look for keywords and look for,
I they when I was at Dell, they were using
yeah,
they started using machine learning, and because the number of, I mean, they were hiring at one point at Dell when I was there 300 people a day, or no, a week, 300 people a
yeah.
week they were hiring.
And now
And
they're firing 300 a week,
yeah, probably more than that.
probably. So
But
consumer protection, I thought this was interesting because I have called so many helplines,
yep.
and I am 100% positive I am not talking to a human. And in the past they would tell you, I'm your friendly AI, I'm your friendly chatbot assistant, or whatever, and you would have to answer these questions. Now you think you're talking to a human for just a little while, and now they're saying they're going
Okay.
to have to like say you have to disclose the information that you're having an AI interaction.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, you call you you're you've I was sitting there the other day and you were interacting with one. You're like, this is an AI.
Mhm.
What difference would it have made in terms of what you're doing if they would have disclosed it? How would that have changed? Because you were trying to get a product return or something, I think,
Yeah.
or something like that.
So
How would that have changed if they just said this is an AI?
for me personally,
Would it have
it would
done
not.
anything?
For me personally, it would not have changed.
I mean, what would
For
you have
me
done? Hung up
personally,
and not returned it?
no, no, no. This is what's going to happen: is they're going to give you something that you can do to where you can bypass the AI.
Oh, if you
They're
want
going
to
to
wait in
say,
a hold?
"Hello, I'm exactly." They're going to give you something to say, if you'd like to bypass our
No, they're
automated
not.
assistant,
It's
then you're
not.
going to have to press 0 or whatever.
It's not what's going
And
to happen.
what's going to happen?
What Dell did to us years ago, when we were buying from Dell, we could pay more for every device we bought in
Ah,
order to get customer service in the US.
in the US. And that way you didn't have to worry about language barriers or anything
That's
like that.
correct.
Yep. Yep.
And I've knew people that did not want to be piped to India. We didn't. We paid extra so we didn't have to get piped to India because we had issues. I wasn't doing the returns, but the person that was had issues with the language barrier, and it wasn't that much extra. That's what they're going to do. It's always, what do you
Jim,
say? What do you say?
you
Follow
were
the money.
brilliant. You were
Follow the
brilliant.
money.
You just followed the money on that one. And that's
I did. I
exactly
follow.
what's
See,
going
I've
to
been
happen.
listening to you. You said follow the money. I followed the money.
That's
So
exactly what's
it's going
going
to
to
be 3
happen.
tiers now, though. It's going to be pay a little bit to get, so you don't have to get AI, you can get a human, and pay a little bit more if you want US based. So it's going to be a 3-tier payment thing. And you're going to, that way they can
Jeez.
charge more. You know
Would you
that's going
like
to
to give
happen.
a credit card number so you can bypass our AI system? Yeah,
Well,
I can see it now.
we did it at the time of purchase. When we purchased the products,
Right.
we bought the, because they always have a thing where you can click,
Hmm.
you're gonna open up to click your warranty selection if you want to
Protection.
buy the warranty, your
Hmm.
protection, and it's gonna have 3 tiers in there. There's gonna be little check boxes, and you have a little radio button where you pick your tier, and it charges you based on that. I'm surprised that hadn't already happened.
All right, so I have to say something before we move on to the next one because
Go.
we're already running out of time. What did I not see about these bills that are covering a lot of stuff? What's the one thing that's not in that list?
I don't have any idea. There's lots of things.
AI literacy and education.
Well, that's what the next thing's about.
Mm.
Sort
That's
of,
because
kind of,
Microsoft, OpenAI, they're
and
partnering.
Anthropic.
They're partnering with the AFT, which is like a really
American
big
Federation of
teacher,
Teachers.
big teacher group, and they're saying that they're going to train teachers on how to use artificial intelligence.
Okay, we don't have enough time for me to go off on a rant about that. I I personally and I'm not just saying this because you and I do training or professional development. I'm saying this because I truly believe the thing you and I said from day one. If you're not careful, all these companies are going to make everything vanilla.
Mm-hmm.
The AI you're going to get is vanilla. You're not going to get one that works great. You're going to get one that works pretty well for your applications because they've been doing that ever since technology was introduced. They take it and they take out everything that doesn't make them enough money, and what they leave is this vanilla version that never works well for anybody. It works,
I can watch a video and I'll get a little certification little thing that I can put on my outside
and that's
door in my classroom.
exactly what's going to happen. Is it's going to be this generic online training like that training we have to go through every year that's so painful
Safe schools.
for
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff. You know what? Maybe they did a great job with that. We're not supposed to mention names. Maybe they did a great job with that. But watching that same video year after year for someone who has attention problems like I do is torture. I mean,
Yeah.
it is awful for me, and I'm sure it's not great for anybody else. But my point is that I think AI is different. I think it's different because it can customize itself to you. You need to learn how to interact with this tool. And I do agree that you should get some introduction to it, but you got to get your hands dirty. You got to build things. You got to do, and I just don't see them doing that with this training. I think it's going to be vanilla.
I'm going to
Hey,
segue right there into my book.
well, you want to kill my rant, didn't you?
Well,
I see how you are.
I don't just want to kill your rant, but I
You do.
also want to say that
Let's put
first
some
of
humor
all,
in it.
I'm getting some great feedback from people who have the book in their hands now. And this is one of the ways that this actually has happened. I mean, this is a story that
This is
happened
human stuff.
in a classroom that actually happened. And then the question after the story is, could AI have helped? Right? And so this is the kind of training that you're not going to get through a video about lesson planning or emails or exit tickets or rubrics or, all that stuff. I mean, you're just not going to get it.
Well,
You're
you
just
know
not
what,
going to get it.
you know what I like about what you did with that book. One of the things that I like is you told a story. I hear the dog squeaking the toy, by the way.
Yeah.
You tell the story, but you ask the question, and sometimes the answer is no.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's an important distinction because most of the stuff that comes out of the tech bros in Silicon Valley is no matter what, technology can solve it. They never seem to want to say, this is technology is not the right fit. You and I talk about this a lot. We've got a mobile classroom initiative going on right now in one of our campuses. Our goal is to move technology out of the middle of everything and see. And I actually think AI can help with that. And it's a weird paradigm to think that technology could actually save us from technology to some degree if it's used right. And I think that's the way to go. And I think that
Yeah.
that's demonstrated in what you did with the
So,
book. You said maybe it
yeah.
doesn't fit this time. I'm going to
Well, a
give you a
lot of the
recipe for a
stuff
stress
here.
relief.
Well, and that's what I mean. There's actually one in here that I was like, nothing's helping with this. I'm going to give you a recipe for a margarita. And that's what I did. Like, I had the AI give me a recipe for a margarita for this teacher because it's like, yeah, nothing's going to help with that. And these aren't all funny stories. They're not all things that are, I mean, some of them,
They're
there's
human.
one titled The Closet Punishment. And it's about a teacher that it was the first time she ever had to do like a CPS report. And after she did the CPS report, the parents basically figured out that the little girl's the one who had said what was going on. And so the little girl got punished and was like put in a closet for a couple of days with just food and water. And so the teacher did another CPS report, of course, but the little girl stopped talking after that.
So
And how can AI help with that? Well, it can't. And that's what I literally said. I was like, no, AI is not going to help you in that situation. But give a list of common reasons a teacher or a school staff member might be legally or ethically required to report a concern to Child Protective Services. And so it gave like a whole huge, very well thought out thing about all the different things that constitute needing to report. And so even if the answer is no, you can still use the situation as an educational journey to learn something else from that
just
situation.
don't put the kid's name in the AI into
Oh
the AI.
no. And these
I
stories,
say
all the
that all the
names were
time because
changed.
I know you did. We always remind people treat it like any FERPA thing. You don't put a kid's name in Google. Don't put a kid name when you do.
File off the serial numbers.
File off the serial numbers. My favorite saying. By the way, it's really hard to take you seriously when that dog is squeaking that
I'm
toy. So
sorry. I
she's
don't think
so excited.
have we now that we're on video, have we ever shown Sadie on our
I have
podcast?
no idea.
Sadie girl, come here. Here, I'm gonna show Sadie and then we're gonna say bye. Come here, Sadie. Come here. Come here.
Well, I got one more thing I was gonna say right quick after you show Sadie. Yes, there's Sadie girl. She is a golden doodle who happens to
Yeah.
be white and not golden. She's got a little bit of golden. And we saw her twin the other day, Georgia.
You pulled off the side of the road and almost ran him over trying to go
I
talk to that
did
man about his
not. I
dog.
turned around and I was very safe about it. I rolled the window down because he was looking at me like I was some kind of crazy person and let Sadie stick her head out. And then he got excited.
So this is Sadie, and then the box in the
So,
background is a bunch of my books.
so
So
I
it's
was going to
on
say
Amazon. Gotta go get it.
before before we go away, we did have one of our longer term listeners, one of the guys that works with us at the school. He came by.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about how we should do some stuff about the basics of AI. And so I was just going to say that I did start my own separate YouTube channel, which I'm finding out all the work you do doing video stuff. But I'm going to start doing projects, things that you do with the AI. Some of it's going to be you and I still doing stuff around home. So we may do it there, or we may start doing it on our podcast. But we're going to try to start doing some stuff where we talk about the basics. We've been doing it so long, especially I do it so much with AI. You and I both use it every day for something that we don't want the woman on the train problem where I think that, AI is not important or the basics aren't important. I mean, and then suddenly somebody reminds us very pointedly that the basics
They still
are
want to know
important.
the basics.
They
Yeah.
still want to know the basics. Anyway, we're over time.
We're over time. All right. So my name is Maurie, and I'm here with my husband Jim and Sadie. And we hope that you guys have a marvelous rest of the week.